Hi, Mrs. Fernandy here, ready to read another chapter and a half, maybe, of The Losers Club by Andrew Clements. My book, chapter 36, starts on page 211, so make sure you're on the right page. Big idea. Please pass the butter. As she handed the butter dish across the table to Alec, his mom said, I got an email today from the school about next Monday's open house. They've made extended day part of the program this year. I think that's nice, don't you? Not really, he said, because it means there'll be tons more people there. And Mrs. K said they're only doing it because of the scheduling problem. Well, I still think it's a nice idea, she said. Alec shrugged and said, fine. Jumping in to change the subject, Alec's dad asked, so, how far did you get with Fahrenheit 451? Finished yet? Alec shook his head. About halfway through. I really like it. But do you think anything like that could ever happen in the future, where books were totally outlawed? His dad said, there are lots of countries right now where governments try to control everything people read. Or watch on TV, his mom added, or listen to on the radio, or access through the internet. And remember how the Nazis burned piles of books in the street, like in The Book Thief? Same thing. And if it happened once, it could happen again. Nodding wisely and speaking to no one in particular, Luke muttered, dictators, and then stuffed a wad of lasagna the size of a golf ball into his mouth. Right, his dad said. Dictators are always afraid they're going to lose control, and they always do. Alex spread butter onto a piece of warm Italian bread, but as he started to take a bite, a thought hit him, hard. This afternoon, when I wanted to tell those kids they couldn't change the name of the club, that was being a dictator. So, am I scared I'm going to lose control, or lose respect, or lose this weird battle I've been having with Kent, and lose Nina as a friend? It was because of the word lose, using it 4 times in a row, one phrase right after another. That's what caused an idea to come zooming straight at Alec, a big one. It landed smack in the middle of his mind. He scooted his chair back from the table. Save my plate, okay? I have to go do something. His mom shook her head. Stay and finish your dinner. Without another word, Alec methodically demolished his food. 3 minutes later, he said, may I please be excused now? He was excused, and by 7:30, Alec had an email ready to send to the 17 other members of the Losers Club. Hi, can we all agree to hold off on the name change thing until after the open house on Monday? We can have a vote about it next Tuesday after school, and whatever the majority wants to call the club, that'll be fine with me. But I have an idea for the open house, and I need some information from each of you. Email to me later tonight if possible, and by tomorrow at 7 p.m. at the latest, okay? Then Alec described what he wanted each club member to send him. They were all probably going to think he was crazy, including Nina, but Alec didn't care. He didn't want to look stupid or unprepared at the open house any more than they did, and as long as everybody went along with him, he was sure this idea was going to work. Well, pretty sure. But he was going to need a lot of help from Luke, because this plan was going to take some serious computer know-how, plus some printer skills. Other stuff, too. Alex scribbled a quick list of the supplies he would need. Looking it over, he decided that between his mom's home office and his dad's home office, most of these things weren't going to be a problem, so that was good. The biggest problem? Time, because 8 o'clock next Monday evening was going to get here fast. The message was finished, and Alec had triple-checked each address. He read it over again for the 4th time. Then he took a deep breath and made himself click the send button. His computer made a loud whoosh, and the email was on its way. It was time to stop worrying and get to work. Chapter 37, Best Book Ever. It was open house night, and Alec's dad visited all his classrooms with him, while his mom did the 3rd grade tour with Luke. Social studies, math, language arts, Alec trudged along from room to room, sitting down, standing up, nodding when spoken to, smiling now and then. But he barely heard a word, hardly noticed anything except how dry his mouth felt and how many times he gulped. And the closer it got to 8 o'clock, the worse he felt. Finally, their classroom visit ended. He and his dad met up with Luke and his mom near the office, just as Mrs. Vance made a PA announcement. Please make your way now to the gym for refreshments and a brief presentation about the extended day program. Alec was glad to see a lot of parents and kids heading for the doors, going home. Even so, the hallway leading to the gym was packed. As he shuffled through the doorway with his family, the gym seemed smaller to Alex, and it took him a moment to figure out why. The folding bleachers along the west wall had been pulled out. It looked like almost every seat would be filled in a matter of minutes. At 8:15, Mrs. Case stood up and gave a short welcoming speech, introducing herself as the director of the program. Then she said, "And now it's time for our show and tell, so I'd like all the extended day kids to go to your regular places. But before we talk about the activities that happen here in the gym, I want to introduce Mr. James Langston. He's standing here surrounded by students he helps every afternoon in our homework room, and he'd like to say a few words." Mrs. Case tried to hand him the portable microphone, but he waved it off. Mr. Langston looked around the gym and it got even quieter. He had the same effect on all the parents that he'd had on Alec. He cleared his throat, then spoke with a voice so loud and clear that it almost echoed off the walls. "The kids who come to my study room work very hard every day. It's a wonderful thing to see. We don't have anything special to show everybody this evening, but when the grade cards come out in December, I would stack up the scores of these kids against the scores of any other group of kids in the whole school. They make good use of their afternoons, and it's an honor to spend time helping each of them to do such excellent work. Thank you." The applause was loud and long, and the kids gathered around Mr. Langston were clapping too. It made Alec wish he had stayed in the homework room. If he had, his open house presentation would be over already. Mrs. Case said, "Thank you, Mr. Langston, and now we're going to start here in the active games corner of the gym with Mr. Ben Jensen. Then we'll go right around the room, and all the different groups will tell a little bit about how they spend their afternoons." Alec was back at the club table, and he sat at his regular spot. Nina smiled at him, but it didn't make him feel any better. The way the room was set up, the Losers Club was last in line for the show and tell. Alec wiped his hands on his pants again, but they kept sweating. Mr. Jensen stood next to home plate on the wiffle ball diamond. The active game kids started out the year with a super kickball league. Now we're having fun with wiffle ball, and pretty soon we're going to switch over to another great indoor game, Nerf dodgeball. He turned to the boys and girls who had lined up along the wall behind him and asked a question that sounded totally rehearsed to Alec. "Does someone have an idea why so many kids like the active game program?" Almost every hand went up, and Mr. Jensen pointed to a 5th grade girl. "It's just so fun, and after sitting in classroom most of the day, it's great to be able to run around." Mr. Jensen gave her a big smile. "Thanks, Haley. Now let's get the wiffle ball teams out here and see some action." Totally rehearsed, thought Alec, but he had to admit that it made a good little show. Players took their positions, the pitchers stood at the mound, and it didn't surprise any of the kids to see who was up at bat. Kent. He tapped home plate with a skinny yellow bat, got set for the pitch, then crack! The ball whizzed left just above the shortstop, a perfect base hit. Over 500 kids and guests clapped and cheered and hooted as Kent sped to first base, rounded toward second, then held up as the left fielder got the ball back to the infield. Mr. Jensen knew there wasn't going to be a better moment than that one, so he said, "That's what we do, and the kids all get a real kick out of it." Then to the players he said, "Thanks a lot, everybody." And the onlookers clapped again as the teams went back to their places along the east wall. Mrs. Case announced, "Mr. Brian Wilner is in charge of our club's program. Mr. Wilner?" She held out one hand toward him, and the focus shifted to the northeast corner of the gym. "Thanks, Mrs. Case. We've got 6 active clubs, and there's a lot going on every day. The club members themselves are going to tell you what they're up to, starting in this corner with the chess club." The 4 chess kids took turns talking about how they were learning the classic moves, studying books and videos with some of the great games of the Grand Masters, and playing several games of their own every day. Their presentation lasted less than 3 minutes. After some polite applause, one of the girls in the origami club stood up and told a little about the history of origami. A very nervous boy then explained how origami teaches a person to be patient, orderly, and precise. Then a girl talked about the kinds of animals and forms they were learning to fold. They ended by holding up the biggest origami swan that Alec had ever seen, over 2 feet tall, folded from one enormous square of pink paper. And then they placed 20 more swans on their table, each one smaller than the one before, with the very last one so tiny it was invisible to anyone who was more than 5 feet away. The nervous boy ended by saying, "And we hope you'll walk by our table later and look at our other designs." We're going to stop right there with the more applause. And we'll be back to finish the book.